October 25th, 1944. Philippine Sea approaches. Night haze rides a long, lazy swell. A dark horizon breathes and erases itself. Aizawa stands at the director cheekbone against cold metal, the binocular rims damp with salt. Range drum clicks whisper their dry arithmetic, bearing ticks step like a metronome the sea cannot hear. Muffled bridge orders move through the voice tubes as if spoken through cloth. He keeps his breath on a strict 4 count and asks the only question that matters: how many seconds between straddles. Smell of hot paint and cordite threads the wind. A faint varnish note leaks from the plotting table. The deck transmits a fine tremor through his shoes, not fear, only machinery. He traces spread lines in his mind, angles on the torpedo board, crisp as a calligrapher's stroke. The oath he made to himself years ago in the gunnery school returns unchanged. Never spoil geometry. Never let panic turn triangles into scribbles. The sea is quiet enough to lie, and it almost does. Then the sky ahead blinks white and orange in a staggered ladder, and the air tears before the sound arrives. 9 mouths of thunder do not speak at once. They step, they correct, they learn him. Shock rolls across the bridge windows. Headset felts bite his temples as the first bracket splashes stand up tall ghosts that mark the water where he is and where he will be if he hesitates. The range drum clicks again, obedient, suddenly small. He calls for minute trims, preserves the track, refuses to let the wake smear the angles. The voice net flutters static like sand, then clears just long enough for a clean fragment from somewhere out there. Flat and unhurried, a man speaking as if over coffee. Keep the solution hot. Next salvo in 12. The words have no edge and therefore cut deepest. 12 is not a number. It is a breath and a half. It is the span of a blink held too long. It is the difference between a careful doctrine and a deck that jumps. Aizawa tastes metal. He keeps the triangles perfect because perfection is the only thing he can still control. But the sea has acquired a new rhythm, and it is not his. The second ladder climbs nearer, the splash crowns are tighter, and the question he asked at the start is already changing shape. How many seconds between straddles? How many breaths are left inside those seconds? Hayashi once said, with the dry smile of a rangemaster, that American machines are farm tools dressed as ships, hinges big as fists, ladders like scaffolding paint laid on with a broom. Crude will never outshoot craft. Aizawa believed it because belief fit the arithmetic of glass hand-lapped prisms, micrometer screws, men trained to ride a swell with their breath until optics and ocean shook hands. Precision, then impact. That was the bargain. The bargain dies by accounting, not by aim. On the plotting table, the geometry is clean. On the water, something uglier keeps its promises. The enemy's fire control does not wait for a gentle trough or the perfect roll cue. A black box with its own heartbeat watches, the sky eats bearings, pushes solutions to turrets with a confidence no horizon can interrupt. Aizawa's director needs eyes, theirs needs electricity. He tells himself electricity can be fooled. Then the next ladder walks in tighter than the last, as if the sea had been paved overnight. He counts labor in his head to stay calm. A single optical director, months of polishing men with ruined fingertips, lenses that cannot be replaced at sea. A stabilized radar, set bolts, leads spare modules stacked in crates with numbers stenciled in white. When something breaks, they do not fix, they swap. The difference between repair hours and replacement minutes is not a technicality. It is the shape of the future arriving on schedule. Shock comes again before the sound then arrives as a sheet that rattles fittings and drags a growl across the voice tubes. Headset felt scratches his temples. The net turns grainy like sand poured through wire. Aizawa sets his jaw, but the body keeps its own logbook. Palms wet exactly as the thunder resolves into 9 distinct throats, as if the skin knew first. He resets his breath to 4 and fails at 3. The range drum ticks obedient, embarrassed. He asks himself where the skill went. It is still here. Men on his deck can solve angles in a squall, can place a torpedo triangle on a wake no wider than a sentence. Yet skill now travels slower than the enemy's corrections. Their ladder learns faster than his hand can write. When he trims, they trim more quickly. When he masks, they unmask with a new solution already hot. The old truth, wait for the first perfect salvo, and own the night bleeds out a degree at a time into a bucket marked throughput. Hayashi tries to speak steadiness into the net. American crudity, he says, cannot think, it only pushes. The words help until the next update arrives from the dark, effortless and plain solution, holds 12. No pride, no gunnery poetry, just time cut into practical pieces and passed down a chain that never stalls. 12 does not measure courage. 12 measures a cycle hoist ram, set close fire, correct again. Their doctrine carries a metronome below the waterline. Aizawa looks at his hands. The tremor is small, the kind that would never spoil a careful line drawn with a brush. The betrayal is not that the enemy shoots well, it is that the instruments he loves, glass drum, the clean language of angles, now translate to a slower dialect than the one spoken by power cable switch and a factory that has learned how to breathe in bulk. He tries to move blame into a place he can fight it. Pilot error ship handling a sloppy messenger. None of it holds. The helmsman is crisp. The messenger repeats perfectly. The pilot fish around the screen swim their pattern like a printed diagram. What fails is the moral choice his Navy made years ago: worship the perfect moment and starve the machine that would deliver good moments over and over. He can feel that choice every time the net hisses with static and then clears into American plane speech, followed by the second thunder. The body keeps the count, even if the mouth refuses. Palms wet, pulse up, breath shortened, geometry intact, reality ahead of it by 12 seconds. He looks again at the enemy rhythm and sees finally that it is not crudity. It is a decision to trade ornament for recurrence, to accept that a good enough salvo delivered now and again will beat a beautiful salvo that requires a moon, a roll, a prayer. The insult fails under the weight of sound. The sea has a new grammar, and it is written in cycles per hour. The first turn is textbook angle away, just enough to comb the tracks, keep the bearing rate tame, feed the director a smooth curve the instruments can love. Aizawa draws the triangle in his head: own track, enemy track, intercept leg, then lets the sea write the same shape under his shoes. Orders travel in short threads 2 degrees port. Hold, make 28 knots. Standby tubes gyro set to spread. The deck hums like a taut string. Somewhere ahead, the orange-white rungs of splash crowns mark the enemy's attention. They are not random. They step, they listen, they answer. The screen breathes with him. Destroyers knife outward to distract the ladder. The cruiser hull beneath Aizawa takes a small bite of sea to loosen the pattern stalking their wake. The plotting table shows a clean convergence window. If the swell holds, the spread will cross the enemy's path like a low fence laid in darkness. Kubo leans in at the gun station. Lips moving with the counting, he always hides a secret metronome only his fingertips are allowed to hear. Not yet, Aizawa says softly. Not into the net, but into the metal that can carry thought better than air. He wins the first inch. The next enemy salvo lands just aft, too wide, too late, a sloppy bracket that would have won applause at gunnery school for being merely close, not lethal. He takes the gift, without smiling. Steady. Trim 2 to starboard. Hold your roll on the count. The voice net, frayed by static, gives back confirmation in pieces that still fit together. For a few breaths the geometry gleams. Angle on the bow tightens. Gyros are where he wants them. The torpedo triangle is a taut wire ready to sing. Then the ladder changes accent. The next leap is shorter, the correction immediate, as if the guns had learned a new language between one breath and the next. Splashes rise forward, and a beam in the same heartbeat, a pincer born from arithmetic, Aizawa cannot see. The deck thumps. An officer flinches. Kubo does not flinch. He grips the wheel harder, and that is worse. Aizawa watches the fingertips go pale. The small tremor that means nothing in calligraphy means everything in timing. He gives the order for minute helm to preserve the spread. The helm answers. The sea answers louder. A soft fragment drifts through the net from nowhere visible. Solution good next in 12. No gloat, no chant, just time cut into equal pieces. The body hears it and counts without permission. 12. He could hold the window if 12 were 15, if the swell paused politely, if a dozen other ifs would present their papers. They do not. Kubo's right hand finds its gate, misses by a half beat, corrects, then misses the correction by the width of fear. The triangle wobbles not enough for a layman's eye, enough for a sea that hunts in seconds. Another thunder walks in. Not one voice, 9 overlapping corrected mid-echo. The splashes bracket so tight the water seems to grow ribs. Mask. Unmask. Keep your timing, Aizawa says into the headpiece, as if words could be sandbags against a tide. He watches the perfect thing he built, spread lines bearing rate. The little cathedral of angles flex under a weight it was not designed to bear recurrence. Every time he steadies, they are ready. Every time he opens a seam, a new correction closes it before the beat he needs to fire clean. The first success evaporates the way frost evaporates from a rail when sun hits steel. They had pulled the enemy off balance for a handful of breaths, and the ladder had widened. In older nights, that widening would have been the curtains parting the stage where the perfect salvo entered. Tonight, the curtain snaps shut between syllables. The black horizon coughs new blossoms. The headset complains like wet paper. The bridge windows sing with shaken fasteners. Kubo's hands shine with sweat. He rubs a thumb on the wheel to find dry friction that does not exist. The gate clicks late again, and the late clicks breed others. Aizawa cheats. He slides a degree more drift than doctrine allows to buy Kubo a steadier picture, a decision he will not write down later. The drift ruins nothing yet. The triangle can be repointed, but a sliver of oath is already on the floor. He hears his own breath split from 4 count into 3 and a bit, and hates the sound. The enemy does not care. Hoists, grunt, rammers, push breaches close, and the sky accepts another line of answers. Across the formation, other captains are doing the same sacred dance. Hold the angle, protect the arc, keep the range in a corridor, where your weapons sing and theirs mutter. The sea usually honors the devout. It has a new church now. The enemy's rate owns the night the way a locomotive owns a grade by refusing to stop. A jam would be mercy. A cooling pause would be human. What comes instead is a smooth return to pattern each time the splashes falter like a man who never loses his place in a song. Aizawa thinks in numbers because thinking in fear is useless. Cycle time becomes distance traveled. Distance traveled becomes life lost or found. If their own correction needs 8 seconds to settle after a 2-degree helm, and the next enemy ladder will stand up in 12, then there is a 4-second window that belongs to him. The ship lunges through that window, and finds it already taken by the next correction from the dark. The math is not wrong, it is late. Late is death's favourite adjective. Kubo mutters the count again. He should be a temple bell. He is a man with blood in his wrists. The tremor is subtle until it chooses not to be. He lifts to hit the gate and finds the wheel tacky with sweat. The touch costs a fraction. The fraction costs the window. Aizawa does not blame him. Blame would be a way to pretend this is solvable by scolding. He blames the rhythm that will not break. The torpedo party waits for the clean word that does not come. Wind shifts, spray salts, the forward mounts. One officer wipes his eyelids with the back of a hand, a gesture no book counsels against, and yet every book would remove if it could. The triangles on the table still look beautiful. They are paintings in a gallery where the lights keep dimming and brightening before you can read the plaque. Hold your fire, Aizawa says, and the words taste like defeat and wisdom mixed. He will not throw good geometry into bad time. The enemy gives them another answer for refusing to answer thunder close enough to shake marrow, followed by the soft administrative voice that promises the next set will arrive on schedule. Discipline here is not bravery. It is a tax paid to a doctrine that no longer buys protection. The trap is not steel. It is tempo. It is the feeling of being outthought not in the head but in the hands. He can land a perfect correction. He can keep the wake clean. He can thread a triangle through a moving corridor of water, but each achievement expires before it matures. The more perfect the execution, the more naked the futility. He imagines telling Hayashi that the enemy is not crude. The enemy is punctual. Punctuality suffocates art. A shell goes long and throws its white pillar so near the bow that spray slaps his cheek through the open slit. He tastes salt and oil. The headset hisses like a kettle. Kubo's wheel knocks against its stop with the smallest, angriest sound a machine can make. The formation holds anyway because they were taught to hold. They invent no heroics, only procedures. They are exquisite procedures. They do not change the fact that another 12 is already walking toward them. Aizawa feels the doctrine in his chest like a suit of silk armor, fine and useless against bullets. He could order the shot and call it courage. He could keep the angle and call it pride. He does neither. He rides the pattern because that is what living requires in this minute. Discipline remains. Its meaning shrinks. The sea does not applaud. The sea waits for the next correction and receives it on time. The next thunder does not arrive. It steps into the bridge and sits in his bones. 9 mouths again, not simultaneous but so close that the ears cannot separate them. Light arrives before sound, a ladder that seems to grow from the sea itself. Then the shock floods the glass, and the headset scratches his temples with a low animal buzz. His breath count breaks without permission. 4 in, 4 out becomes 3 and a torn edge. The range drum keeps clicking, brave and small. Drift 2, he says, then hears his own voice and hates it. 2 is not doctrine. 2 smears the triangle he has guarded like a family name. But the last bracket stood up so tight that the water wore a crown around the hull, and the next correction will likely put steel into a place where men stand. He feels the oath move in his mouth like a loose tooth. Never spoil geometry. He spoils it. Harder, he adds, softer. The helmsman answers. The hull leans. The wake writes a new story that the torpedo board will refuse to read. The headset buzz thickens until it is indistinguishable from the thunder. Electronics and shock settle into a shared animal. Across the net, voices step on each other clear, then grainy, then clear again, and in that strobe the formation loses its perfect shape. A destroyer kicks its stern like a horse and throws a silver scimitar of foam into the dark. Another ship's screw beats a quicker rhythm as it sprints to keep station. The screen is scattering in small, shameful corrections, each one sensible, all of them a confession. Kubo feels the change immediately, not with thought but with fingers. His wheel meets a ship that will not hold the gate. He tries to fight the drift like an insult, clamps his jaw and times for the beat that used to live under his skin. The beat has moved. His hands shake harder and stop pretending otherwise. One attempt at clean timing dies against the new yaw. The torpedo triangle, once poised like a fencer's lunge, slumps into a sketch. Aizawa watches his own order live in Kubo's tremor and knows the sin belongs to him, not to the sailor. Another ladder of blossoms strides in closer on the forward quarter. The bridge windows flex and sing in their metal housings. The smell of paint and cordite and salt becomes one taste, bitter and familiar. He wants to pull the drift back, kiss the line straight again, hand the triangle its honor. A splash throws a white pillar so near the bow that spray needles into his eye and blurs the instrument panel. The clean thought becomes a practical one. This distance, at this rate, with this rhythm of correction, will kill men if he holds a course invented for a kind of war the enemy has already replaced. All ships mask then open when splash crowns die, he says. The phrase is from another life. It belongs to nights when masking fooled optical range, when timing mattered because the enemy could be made to guess. The enemy does not guess tonight. The answer climbs the sky again, radar-timed and unembarrassed, a cadence that refuses to care about pride. Heart rate spikes hard enough that he hears it thud in his own ears, a drum under the headset buzz. Breath refuses the 4 count and snaps into small, hungry sips. He thinks of students in the gunnery school drawing perfect triangles on chalkboards, the hush of a room where precision is worshipped and the sea cannot argue. He wonders if any of those chalk triangles can bear the weight of a metronome that lives below the waterline. Rudder amidships, he says on reflex, as if there is a posture that could apologize. Then he contradicts himself in the next breath, port now. The ship answers with a groaning arc that the deck translates into a sideward shove against his soles. Bearings change, range changes. The perfect corridor for their own weapons drifts away like a boat slipped from its mooring. He knows that some old teacher's voice would call this cowardice. He also knows that the men on the forward mounts are not diagrams, and the enemy's cycle will not honor poetry. The screen begins to look like a photograph taken with a trembling hand. Lights smear, courses overlap and part. Procedures blossom, whistle signals, lamp flashes, the dull freight of standing orders hauled out of memory and set on a table already crowded with fear. It is not panic. It is too organized for panic. It is survival in steps. Each step, a small betrayal of a promise made to a dead idea. The next broadside arrives while he is giving a correction he has never liked. The thunder and the headset noise merge into a single heavy pressure, as if the air itself had thickened into rope. A petty officer drops a slate pencil and does not bend to retrieve it. Someone laughs once a dry exhale that used to be a laugh. Kubo whispers a count and then stops ashamed of the sound. The wheel shivers. The gate comes and goes like a blinking buoy you cannot time. He orders the torpedo party to stand down from the ready that had been their religion all night. The word lands like a slap in an empty room. A man answers aye too loudly, then softer, as if apologizing to the tubes. The geometry on the table still looks immaculate. It lies. The sea has imposed a tax on beauty, and he is paying in small humiliations. A drift here, a late gate there, a formation that cannot hold the picture, its captains drew for it with love. He thinks of Hayashi, the fierce homily about American crudity, delivered with that dry smile, how clean the argument had felt when the enemy was a rumor. Crudity has a voice tonight, it says gently next in 12, and then it delivers. Not menace, not art, only punctuality. He feels small not because he fears death, but because his craft honed against glass and breath and patience has been turned into an ornament. The ship still lives, because he ruined his own drawing. Survival wears his failure like a medal. Hard to starboard, he says, and the ship pivots into a lane of relative quiet bought by the last splash pattern's geometry. The relative quiet lasts less than a dozen heartbeats. Another correction walks in from the dark like a clerk on rounds. He accepts that he will ride from pocket to pocket, not to win, but to delay the moment when steel finds warm targets. He will not write these orders down later. He will let the logbook pretend he fought with triangles until the end. Inside the headset, a long burr smooths into silence, then returns. His breath discovers a rhythm that is not the old 4-count, and not yet a new law, something ragged that carries air without dignity. Shame settles on his shoulders like a wet coat. It has weight, and it conducts cold. He is still precise. He is still brave. Neither trait can change the new grammar being taught to him one broadside at a time. The ship steadies on the new line. The deck tremor evens. Men resume their small tasks with the careful motions of people who have decided to live until told otherwise. He stands at the director, a man who has broken his oath and kept his crew. The headset crackles once more. Somewhere out there, a calm voice marks time for a machine that never loses it. He swallows. He allows the drift to stand. He feels irrelevant and alive in the same breath, and the breath is short. Morning lifts like a grey curtain over a coastline chewed into pits and lips. Black sand holds heat even before the sun earns it. Smoke threads lie flat in the onshore breeze. Aizawa walks the strand with a small canvas bag, and no audience stepping around shallow craters that still steam where water has pooled. The sea behind him looks innocent. The night has been ground into fragments you can pick up. He crouches by a jagged fan of metal and turns it with 2 fingers. It is not elegant, only honest, a torn petal from a 16-inch blossom edges scabbed with rust where yesterday met salt. Farther up the beach lie the arguments he cannot refute, wooden pallets with stenciled codes. Canvas powder bags split to show clean, pale cloth. Grease pencil marks that tell a handler where to stand and when to lift. Every object speaks the same language. Do it again. A crate lid gives easily under his pocket knife. Inside, spare leads and connectors ride in cut foam as if they were eggs. You do not repair such things with a sermon. You swap them with a wrench. He can see the path from factory floor to turret hoist in his head. Stencil to dock, dock to magazine, magazine to rammer, rammer to sky. No romance. Only a sequence that tolerates clumsy hands and bad weather. He finds a cap from a shell nose paint-scraped, lettered simple, and weighs it in his palm. It is heavy in the way certainty is heavy. He remembers Hayashi's line about crudity, and feels how wrong the word tastes in daylight. Crudity would have left fingerprints of improvisation. This leaves footprints of a plan. Aizawa straightens and looks down the beach to the headlands, where blast has shaved the rock to a dull sheen. The pattern is visible even in ruin. Lines of impact, marching corrections, narrowing a teacher working a problem until the board is clean. He hears again the flat voice from the knight next in 12. He had learned to count salvos as breaths. Here the sand has converted counting to a map. Kubo comes up without speaking and offers a dented fragment tied to a length of fuse wire. Aizawa runs a thumb over the stamped numerals and the little groove that tells a loader where to seat. He does not offer comfort or invention. He offers the only sentence that fits the wreckage and the crates and the measured spaces between holes. Their math is time. Kubo nods once as if the beach had said it first. He kneels at a shallow pit and lets numbers assemble themselves without pride. Salvos per hour of contact, corrections per minute tolerated without loss of accuracy, minutes to regain a solution after a maneuver compared to the minutes the enemy needs to bring the next answer. Shells landed per yard of shoreline per cycle of the turret, hoists per breath, rammers per prayer. The tally resists poetry, and therefore feels true. By his count, the enemy owned most of the hour. Where his ships bought silence with drift, the other side rented it back with punctuality. Where his men nursed glass to keep doctrine alive, the other side fed electricity to keep rhythm unbroken. He writes, none of this down. The sand remembers for him. He opens another crate fragment and finds a laminated card with steps printed big enough for tired eyes. It offends him and comforts him at once. A force that plans for fatigue and error will beat a creed that imagines neither. He closes the lid gently as if the simplicity were a shrine. When he speaks again, it is to the shoreline, not to Kubo. He lists the night like a quartermaster because that is how defeat must be measured if it is to teach anything. Available guns against available minutes. Cycles achieved against cycles desired. Time to first straddle after a course change. Time to second. Time to third. Losses prevented by ruinous drifts he will never confess on paper. He lets the bag swallow a few small pieces, a cap, a wire, a sliver of crate stenciling a powder thread that smells faintly of sweetness. Evidence, not souvenirs. The sun climbs. Offshore the water shows the flat shine that promises a clear solution to any device willing to look without romance. He breathes once steady now, and sets the final figure where he can live with it. The side that can put accurate steel back into the air sooner owns the shore the hour the men. Availability is not a virtue, it is a weapon. The beach has graded his doctrine and left no margin notes, only holes spaced at even intervals. Dawn makes the sea look newly made, but the night's arithmetic does not wash away. Aizawa stands where the sand still holds heat and gives the verdict aloud, not for drama but for record. Sortie-accurate radar salvos per hour of demand decide the sea. The sentence is not an opinion. It is a ratio with a coastline attached. He builds the measure in plain steps. Accurate, 16-inch broadsides, sustained per hour of contact. The count lives in turret cycle time, hoist throughput, powder and shell feed, and the seconds a director or radar needs to regain a tracking solution after a maneuver. If the enemy's recovery is 12 and yours is 20, their steel returns while you are still breathing through the correction. If their logistics push fresh bags and projectiles before fatigue frays the drill, their accuracy does not decay when yours begins to drift. The hour becomes theirs because its minutes answer on cue. He hears the old catechism of geometry try to rise and lets it pass unspoken. Angles still matter, they are simply not sovereign. Sovereignty belongs to recurrence to the machine that forgives mistakes by making the next cycle soon enough that the last one's error cannot grow teeth. The Iowa battery does not need a perfect sea or a perfect man. It needs electricity, spare modules, printed steps large enough for tired eyes, and a shipyard that refuses to be late. He frames his own doctrine without bitterness. Availability is not luck, not crudeness, not an insult to skill. It is skill reallocated to pace. You may teach a hand to draw a flawless triangle. They taught a fleet to draw a good one again and again under fire. That fleet will inherit whatever coast lies inside the hour it can keep supplied with answers. He sets the final number where any officer can test it. For every hour of contact, count how many radar-timed broadsides land inside straddle distance with corrections that do not slip. Subtract recovery delays you cannot shorten. Add what logistics can guarantee without apology. The higher total owns initiative, shoreline and breath. Aizawa accepts it because the beach already has. He looks out at the calm and hears the metronome beneath it, steady as a hidden engine. He has not lost respect for precision. He has learned what feeds it. Perfection can win a duel. Availability wins a war. And by 45 availability spoke in thunder.